This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Life was never meant to be fair, she learned. But we must keep running with grace if we are to find purpose and joy in the face of adversity. Valeria interviews Lori Van Dusen. She is the author of Running with Grace, a Wall Street insider's path to true leadership, a purposeful life, and joy in the face of adversity. Lori Van Dusen, CIMA, is the founder and CEO of LVW Advisors, a registered investment advisory firm that serves both wealthy families and individuals, as well as nonprofit institutions throughout the United States. An advocate of client-focused strategies for more than 25 years, she has become the voice of reason for providing unbiased integrated solutions in a fragmented financial services industry. Lori is passionate about numerous philanthropic causes, serving on several boards focused on urban education, health and wellness, and the fine arts. Meet Lori at lvwadvisors.com. Here's the interview with Lori Van Dusen.
In your own words, who is Lori Van Dusen?
Oh, what a great question. And, well, I'm a person who feels that they were put on this planet in this human experience to pay forward some of the things that have happened in my life. And I feel very peaceful and resolute about that. So I'm definitely purpose driven. From the time I was a little girl, I always thought there was this reason that I was here, and I was kind of searching for what that was. And I feel at this stage of my life, I have a good understanding of that.
Right. That's wonderful to hear, especially when you say, I'm at peace, finding this resolution. Being at peace, that is at the heart of spirituality, I would say. That's my path. So that's if there's a destination for what we are looking for, it's peace. So I love to hear that, Lori. You have found peace. And I also love the way we talked a bit off record about the purpose of the human experience, which I would love for you to expand a bit more now, or repeat your answer, actually, if you could. That was very insightful. So yes, talk to me about that. I know you mentioned love. So I have another question, follow-up question after that.
Well, I think the reason for the human experience, or why we're here, is to extend love to each other. And that takes a form. It has many different forms, but love is gratitude. It's teaching, helping others, kindness. I think that's really why we're here. I also think it's, I am also a very deeply spiritual person who knows that God has had a hand on me from the time I was little. I felt that. But I think there's unfinished reasons that we're here. I think we're here. It is like life is on this dimension, like a refining experience, if you allow it to be. And I think we could take one of two paths. You know, we all have failures and losses and disappointments and things that happen. And we're all going to die in a human form. And so I think the paths are to really figure out how to integrate these losses, failures, and things and grow and move forward, or we kind of by definition are dying. So I think you asked me, why I thought I was here or who I am. And I think I'm here to help teach people that as somebody who has been through a lot of stuff, as an example, and not as someone who takes the things that have happened. There have been very, very good things in my life, but there's also been a lot of tragedy and failure. And I think you either take it and pay it forward, or you do some kind of a turtling where you just you don't want to, kind of live anymore. You just want to kind of keep things to yourself, play it safe, go quietly into the night. And I definitely was not put on this planet for that. So that I do know.
Yeah, we can see that. It's quite obvious, which is wonderful too. Yeah, I have heard that before. You probably heard the quote that says, "This experience is not for the faint of heart." Being a human body, it's not for everyone. That's what's not to love about the things that you're sharing here. This is what I live for. If there was one reason, really, it would be this: to have meaningful, deep conversations, connections with other humans. But I have a question about the idea of God. What, where, and who is God to you?
Oh, gosh. God is ever present. God is the source of life, of our life. We all have God in us because we were made in the image of God. So it's an ever-flowing source of energy that I think for me, I go to. And finally, it took me a long time to understand this. I think God talked to me, as I said, my whole life, or maybe in a very loud way sometimes. And I'm so self-determined and self-willed. I didn't really always want to listen. But I think that God is the source of all beautiful energy and love. And when you have these tragedies or these major disappointments or sadness, if you can meditate on God, God shows up. And maybe not in your timeline, but God always shows up. And God is a constant and something that does not disappoint. And so that's who God is to me. But it took a lot of my life experiences to understand that. And when you can tap into God in your everyday life, there are supernatural things that happen. People are put in your path, healing occurs, problems are solved. But again, not always in the way that you want them to be or your human self thinks they should be.
Right, yes. So. Yes. A billion yes to that as one truth, right, of this experience. In our question that I have for you, that I know we will talk about your book. Gosh, and I have too many questions. So you wrote the book, Running with Grace. I love this word, grace. A Wall Street Insider's Path to True Leadership, a Purposeful Life, and Joy in the Face of Adversity. So this is the title. I have lots of questions about that too. But before, you said something very interesting that I haven't heard this way. Unfinished. We have an unfinished reason to be here. It just kind of paused me in a state of reflection. I love reflecting about these things. So, and I'm a student of Advaita Vedanta, which is a Hindu philosophy system. So we go as deep as we can, understanding what this is. So would you say this unfinished reason to be here is exactly that, not realizing God or not realizing that unconditional love, in a sense of becoming one with it, not just, a reflection of it per se, a reflection of God as Jesus did and Buddha. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you have thought about that.
Oh, for sure. I think that that's right. I don't know. That would be, I mean, I have been so humbled in my life by my experiences, and knowing God gets you to a point. I guess I would say this came to me. A lot of things come to me when I am in moving meditation, like running or actually doing yoga or having some, kind of physical experience where I am not really in a conscious mind and things just kind of occur out of that. And I thought, I finally understood that God is all forgiving and love. And that's why we're here, to try to learn that and to forgive each other, and also not to live in regret or remorse. Because if we're living in regret or remorse about things that have happened in the past, we are in the past. And I think that's that kind of unfinished business. Like, how do we get to a point where we're enlightened to learn that those are things that had happened, but we have to let them go and forgive other people, forgive ourselves, really importantly, forgive ourselves. And by holding on to a lot of things that have happened to us, we're really not forgiving ourselves at the heart of it. So I think it's learning from, I don't know, but my sense is it's unfinished, and we're here. It's like, I use this analogy in the book, which is a one that's been used a lot, but, diamonds are created by a lot of real, hardship and violent, kind of pressure. And I think that's part of what life is. It's like this growing and learning and refining. And I don't know, I've always felt like I've been here before.
Yes, me too.
So I just feel like I've been here, or I now meet people, and this is so, again, the last thing from a judgmental comment. It's just like a sense, like, oh, I've been around this person before, or they're an old soul, or there's somebody who I just kind of instantly tap into. And I kind of generally love all people, but there are those people that just hit you, and you're like, oh, old soul.
Yes, I got the feeling. Yeah, it's an intuitive feeling, isn't it? An intuitive knowing, in a way we can't really explain.
I think the intuition is I talk about training your intuition, but I feel like intuition is really your soul. I think it's your soul talking with you. Yeah. And when you don't pay attention, usually in my life, when I have anxiety and things aren't settled out and I don't have clear intuition, it probably means I shouldn't be doing whatever it is it's giving me anxiety, or I should try to figure out the source of it, and pause for a second. But I do think that's your soul.
Yes. It feels that way. I know we have so many labels, right, for these things. It's I find sometimes I feel very much, let's say, attracted to some words, but I know they're just words. So I usually try to drop it all, but it's not easy though, because it's almost like this devotion to the meaning of language, of certain words. So love, joy, peace, freedom, God, all these words, heart, they have this pull. But in the end, I know it's as you said beautifully, it's all about peace, isn't it? Forgiving, which leads to peace. So if there's a destination, would be peace, which means knowing that this is not happening for a reason, but it seems like it's happening for our enjoyment. It really feels that way. It's an experience. So why not see it that way? It's almost like watching a movie. There are so many different kinds of movies, and we just watch them and have that almost like we are left with the flavor, whatever the message was. It's a flavor, really. Perhaps not even a message that we can take anywhere, but it's an experience. But when you talk about forgiving the past and people, what they have done to us, that's what it feels like. watching a movie and holding on to the story. Let's say a sad movie and then crying for the rest of our lives because we watched that movie. That wouldn't work. It wouldn't be fun, right? It wouldn't be fun.
It's hard. It's hard to it's easy to talk about it.
Yes, true.
But it's hard to forgive certain things for people. And I think one of the things I've learned is things have there's an evolution around this, concept of forgiving and, love and extending love. There is a process. And when I find myself in a situation or unsettled about something, or in my very human mode on this frequency, where something is distracting or making me angry or really intensely sad. I write about this in different stories in the book, but you have to give things time. You have to give yourself time to heal, to move through it. I think there are a lot of tools that I've learned to use to get to my intuition, or I think my intuition is my soul talking. And if I'm angry or unsettled or whatever, I really have I just take myself out. It sounds, maybe crazy, but I just take myself to a place like, look, I'm not functioning well today. I'm going to take a half hour, an hour, and I'm going to just go meditate, or I'm going to do a moving meditation or whatever. And I've always found it takes time depending on the circumstances, but ultimately you move through it and you get to a place where you go, okay, if I knew that was going to happen, I wouldn't have signed up for it. I wouldn't have said, sign me up for that experience or that hardship or that person who came into my life and left or whatever it was. But in the end, you realize in every single circumstance, at least I have, and over time, that there was some reason for it and it led you to something else. And I think we as humans, and especially me, my personality, I know one of my, your greatest strengths are also your greatest flaws. And I am a person who I guess you would call a change maker kind of personality. I like to solve problems. I like to go for it. I don't like to sit on the sidelines. And so that has its issues. I've gotten into some trouble that way, and I write about that. But in the end, how I've gotten out and how I've moved through, I've learned a lot of kind of lessons, tools. But I look back, reflecting on it, and I think, okay, I wouldn't have signed up for that. I wouldn't have gone through it that way. But I'm glad that I am here and I'm the person I am now. And anyway, I've learned, and I wouldn't make certain choices. Like it's very deep, but I think it gets back to your whole question about why are we here, and unfinished business and purpose and things. Everything in our life is linked for a reason. And if we saw it, there is part of there's I can't quote the actual where it is in the Bible, but basically there is a part of the Bible where God basically said, I only gave you 20, this is my vernacular, 24 hours in a day, because if I showed you the whole thing, you wouldn't, you couldn't handle it. So I think it's a refining process, and I think everything is linked, every person, every experience, and it's a beautiful mosaic that we could never have figured out.
Yes. I just had this reflection the other day. Going to sleep, I think I thought about this, how amazing divine intelligence is, how it works. We just see one step at a time. But there's I don't know, Laurie, there's a feeling, I don't know if I can call it a feeling or intuitive knowing, felt understanding that we are already what we are looking for. There's no, like when you speak of unfinished business, reason to be here, there was my journey here in the very beginning when I was a child, but then now it's feels very much like this is it. How amazing to be able to see everything as God, as divine intelligence. I think that's what it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think
amazing.
it's predestined by God. Like it's something, we don't, we're born into this world, and we are born, children
Mm.
really are a blank slate when we're born. And I think what happens to us and where we go with life is kind of known by the divine, right?
Mm.
We
Yes.
so yeah.
And the more we, in a way, the word identify, I don't really, I'm not crazy about this word. If I can use another one, if we can, it's almost like closing the gap, because we usually think, oh, I'm human and this is the divine. So I think when we close that gap and we think of ourselves as divine human, or God having this experience, this particular experience through this body mind, then it changes everything. The perception changes.
Hmm.
Like, wait a minute, that's just God expressing itself through everything that I
Yeah.
see and hear.
Yeah.
So,
No, for sure. And the divine order and purpose of things, like no human could have.
yeah.
The most brilliant minds that we know of tried to figure this out, and everything. When you think of things like, to me, there's such a beauty in music
Mm,
and math
yeah.
and the patterns of things, and
Yeah.
it's so deeply intricate in this world. How could a human have ever
Yes.
come up with that? So when you finally
Right.
figure that out,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
there's a divine hand in everything that happens.
Mm.
So
Yes, and I know it's scary to say, or even to contemplate the idea that everything is God, or not even that the God's in everything, but everything is in God. It's happening in
hmm
God, so everything is
yeah.
divine. So that I noticed that some people, they reject this idea, they resist very much. You are God. When I say that here, and I interviewed somebody recently. He's a psychologist, but he's retired now. He wrote a book titled "I Am God," like huge letters,
Mm.
the front, the cover,
Hmm.
and we were talking about this, how much resistance we have of in closing that gap between the human and the divine, kind of becoming this one with the divine, really. So it seems like a lot of us are still going through the journey that you speak of, this unfinished soul business of being here, because we have not really accepted that truth that we are one with God. That's what it really, well, that's my studies, and that's how I see things now. In the eye,
hmm
it's not really the mind that I speak of. It's really the divine, the intuitive eye, per se. It's really saying these words now because it's very powerful. It's actually a lot more real than the human experience itself. It feels so much more
Right.
real. But
Yeah.
abstract for some people, which is interesting to see the levels.
It is abstract. It's well, conventional, religion, it's hard for people to, if they've been raised in very
Mm.
conventional religion,
Yes, right.
whatever it
Mhm.
is, it's hard to understand that God, we are, if you're Christian, and I would consider myself to be Christian, I it's deep, because if you really study Christianity, God, the divine, made us in his image. What
Yes,
does that mean?
right,
That means
right.
that,
Mm,
we
yes.
have God in us, and that's kind of
Mm,
our journey here. We are supposed to
mm,
reflect God,
yes,
however you want to put that
yeah,
in your way to understand it. But I think that people have a hard time
yes.
with the concept of this, because of sometimes how they've grown up in a religious context
Mm,
or whatever.
yeah.
But there is this truth that
Mm,
I feel like some people come at it slowly,
yeah.
and for others it's like a light switch that goes off, maybe. For me, I feel like God has been working on me my entire life.
Yes.
And I still fall back, we all
Mm.
fall back and go, gosh, I need to go do a bunch of yoga today. So I can be that, front facing, loving, kind person that I, want to be. And I am, but there, we have the human experience. We live on this frequency. We live in this dimension,
Yes.
and things happen that we have to navigate, and we have to show up, and it's not always fun.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when you know that, it's kind of this. That's where the peace comes from, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
it's not temporal. What I say to people, they're like, "Well, I just want to be happy." I've heard this a lot lately,
Yeah.
actually. And it's somewhat, my humanness is annoyed by that, I guess, but my spiritual self and myself says, I really want to help this person understand the difference between happiness and peace, because they're different. Happiness is temporal. I mean, it's something, you could be happy about a circumstance and then not, but peace it's that, what you feel, the 6 inches between where your chin is and where your heart is, what you feel right there is either peace or anxiety or fear or whatever you want to call it. And when it's peaceful, you know it.
Yes.
And the enduring peace, to me anyway, it comes from knowing what you just said.
Yes, I love your wisdom. Thank you for sharing it here. The title of this episode, I was thinking about what should I title this? What's the idea here? And then what came to me was a business mind guided by the heart. And hopefully you approve that. If you approve it, that'll be it.
I think that's great.
A business mind guided by the heart.
I think that's great.
Given what you do, the work you've been doing for so many years, which has to do with moving, right, in this reality, in that sense of growing with material things, funds and places and things, objects, which is very much part of the experience here. So why not too? But, and it's funny, Loria, when you say that, I don't think we are ever separate from God, or that reflection of God. It's just that if we seem to forget, I think. So it's almost like that's why a lot of people call awakening. Right? It's a remembrance, it's remembering. But we are never separate, really. It's always the divine.
Never.
Here. And you know what it is too? It's what a lot of people don't understand, or my husband, he really doesn't like that. Oh, you are God. He's a Christian too. Oh my God, he doesn't like that at all, listening to that. But if he could suspend, the conditionings of the mind, what he has learned about religion or from his family or society, then it's easy to see that. But it's not easy to suspend conditioning, right? That takes training too. So that's what I have done. And a lot of monks do that. A lot of people do that these days, actually. And we are able to see the truth. Wait a minute, everything is God. And even beyond that, everything is in God. So that changes everything, because if everything is God, why would we hurt one another or be unkind? It just doesn't happen.
Right. Well, I think that if people were in that place of peace and could get there, we wouldn't have the kind of things going on in society, in the world, the wars, the tragedies that we have. It's pretty deep. But if we could all help each other get to that kind of place of, I really do think it distills down to like love or fear, and all the derivatives of love versus fear. And fear, I've navigated a lot of fear-based things, from, greed, anxiety, the way we hurt each other. It's really all those two things, I think. And love is what God is, and what we are here in the image of God, and we have God in us. And as imperfect as the human experience is, we're here to make it more perfect. I think that's the way I understand it. We're here to really try, and it's not perfect. There will be all these things that I write about, but it's how we take them and how we learn, integrate, and move forward, and how we treat each other as a result. So we could have all these things happen, and we could get bitter and angry and resentful because if there is God, why would he or why would God let all these things happen? Or I could realize that, I think the way I understand it is God is not the architect of all these kind of painful things or things that happen to us that are tragedies. God may allow things to happen so that we can move through and learn. And I kind of think about it that way because of my own life. It makes sense. We are human. We have choices. We make things happen. And it's what we do with the consequences that really matter. So anyway, I think I kind of get at some of that in the book.
That's wonderful. You have so many messages there. I know. Gosh, I'm talking to you forever here about spirituality. And although your work is spiritual to me, very much spiritual. So yes, that message is beautiful too. It's not that God left us. We left God in a sense of the mind separating. Things.
Yes. I think that's what happens. We leave God.
Yes. We forget
and these
about
things
God.
happen.
Yeah. That's it, Laurie. And then when you speak of unfinished reason to be here, how interesting that is. That the way I understand it's that's why we keep coming back in new bodies to finish that mission. So there's no death. We never die. We just change bodies. We just keep changing.
Well, I do think if you don't believe in anything, we have to believe in energy. Something happens when we die, right? And unfortunately, we all will experience death. And I have experienced a lot of it over the last 4 years. And one of the things that I've been taught through the sudden loss of my husband and the sudden loss of my mother within, 24 months of each other, is that they're there. There's energy there. It's loving and it is peaceful. Ultimately, the grieving process is not. My mom used to say, getting old is not for wimps. So it's kind of similar to your human experience is not for wimps, but the grieving process is really, really a difficult one. But what I've learned in the end is that this is not it. This is not it. This is, and unfortunately, many of us live as if this is it. It's not.
Right.
It's not. Yes. It's not a finite thing. It's a continuation.
Yes. Well, there's so many evidence of that, right? It's not even something that we're coming up with or have to believe in, which I don't really like the idea of believing in anything. To me, it's all about experience. So I didn't lose anybody like you did, but I did lose my ex-husband and I felt him all the time, his energies, as if even more powerfully in the sense of it was more real to me, his presence after the body went than before. So that's interesting to notice from my own experience. And I have so many people that I talk to and friends and people around me who have deep experiences with that too, much deeper than I had. So we do have evidence with death, near-death experiences, the life after death, kind of, what do you call it? People who reincarnate, that there are so many investigations. People have investigated everything these days, and there's so much documentation on that it's really, but to me, it's not even a matter of even looking for evidence. It's just so clear that we, as you said, it's a continuation. So whatever we leave here, we continue in a new body. So, or maybe new realities, who knows, right, Laurie? Maybe
we don't know.
Planets.
We don't know, but it's really, I don't have any idea, but I am clear that this is not
right.
it.
Me too. Yes. That's very clear to me as well. Yes. Yeah. And that's why also when I see, some people, it's so sad to see the grieving process, and then they self-destroy too, with alcohol. They do. It's just really, really sad to see that, because it's coming from their understanding, the belief system that this is finite, that we are not infinite. So it goes back to belief
and
systems.
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in this world, right?
Oh, yes.
I think with what we do, I'm in finance, and it's I think that's part of the purpose that I see for my business purpose is always, what is the greater context for this wealth, and what do you really want to do with it that's powerful, because we're all going to die. And it isn't, people have said this over and over again, and I've seen it, and we don't get to the end of our lives, and we're not on our deathbeds thinking, isn't it great how much money I accumulated,
right. Yes.
or how many things I have. It's what did we leave behind in terms of our love, our inspiration? What do we teach people? What do we share with the world? And if we can, it is sad, because there are a lot of people that just can't get out of this reality. And so they're stuck in it, and they're stuck in, behaviors and self-destructive things when something tragic happens, or things don't go the way they planned, or God forbid they come from, abusive situations, or whatever it is. I think it's important for those of us that kind of are having this kind of conversation to try to help, to try to reach out, to try to do things that help people evolve spiritually and know there's a greater purpose beyond, just the here and now. It's hard.
Yes.
Very hard.
Yes.
It's a hard world.
Yes, we can say that, right? To me, it's a fascinating one in that sense. How can we forget our own essence? I keep asking that question. With a smile, though, with a peaceful smile, because I know we're all walking home eventually. We all really... Right. It's an experience of getting lost,
we're
but
all
then,
going home.
we're all going back to it, which is beautiful too. Yeah. So, gosh, so you wrote the book, Running with Grace. Talk to me about the main purpose of writing the book. Did you set an intention, Laurie?
Oh, it's a good question. The main purpose when I started it wasn't a book. It was, I'd never been in therapy before, and my husband died on Father's Day in 2020 suddenly. So I talked with him at 11 o'clock. He was dead at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. No one can be prepared for that. And when I came back, I think when you have a sudden loss like this, literally, we talked about our soul. I think your soul leaves your body. Because I remember looking down on everything that was happening, but, conversations, whether it was my pastor in the room, or my friends or family, or getting ready for his services, or whatever decisions I had to make, I wasn't in the room. I was kind of looking at it from somewhere else. And when I connected with my body, which I think is kind of PTSD, I think that's what happens with post-traumatic stress. And I was told by a trauma therapist, you should journal. And I'd always been a writer. I loved to write, and I love the written word. And I just started writing, and I'd be out. I'm a long distance runner. I'd be out running. Something would come to me, and I'd put it in a voice memo out on a run, or I'd come back and write down something, or I would wake up and journal. When I first would wake up, things would occur, and I would think about them. And what happened is, over the course of 2 years, the journaling kind of shaped itself into a book, where I looked at it and thought, okay, I've written all these things, and I am at a point now where I could pay this forward. And so I started editing what I'd put together, and I realized I didn't ever intend on writing a memoir. I thought, who cares about this? No, whatever. It seemed like a very kind of self-important thing to do. And I feel that way about myself. But then I got to the point where, kind of the theme of what we're talking about, I got to like the grace part where I was sitting at my kitchen counter with a really good friend of mine. And I said, Ian, I know what the title is for the book. It's Running with Grace. And he said, oh my gosh, that's so good. Because grace was a double entendre for, I lost my husband and he left me with our beautiful black Labrador retriever who I ran with every day, was healing, kind of running and this moving meditation that I talk about in the book. And then she died suddenly a year later. She was running one day and not jumping into my car the next day, and she was riddled with cancer. And it was so difficult. Then losing my mom. So all of this was journaling around healing. And after it's really like 2.5 years, I just decided it should be a book. It should be in some kind of chronological order. There were a lot of stories and lessons, and I thought it could be inspiring and something that would help people. And going back again to kind of the first part of our talk, I think we're here as humans to pay forward things in a loving way and teach people, inspire them, show them that yes, life is hard, but by moving through these things, it creates a resiliency and a means to, kind of help other people. And it is really, really synergistic. So that's kind of a long way to answer that question, but it didn't start out as a book. It ended up as a book, and I gave the edited version to a few people that I really trusted, and they didn't know each other, and they all said the same thing to me: you should publish this. So then, including my son, my younger son, who was my editor, I did hire a professional editor and content editors and a legal team and all the things you do when you're going to publish a book. And I thought of it as this big, I thought I'm never going to make a living writing books, but it's not going to replace my day job, but it is this big philanthropic project. And that's kind of how I look at Running with Grace.
Yes, that's exactly how it came across to me. It's just beautiful, though. I love how you're making meaning out of, I have to call it pain. I wouldn't say suffering, because of your understanding of self and the way you come across to me too, energetically. It's very light, so it's turning pain into meaning. That's what I see clearly here.
Yeah,
in life
thank
lessons.
you for that. That's great. Yeah, it's a good summary of it.
And I love the end. I mean, there's so much about the book, the life lessons. The one that caught my attention immediately was people over profits. I put the love word next to it. And that's funny that you talked a lot about love. And I have, when I prepared for this, I had love here. People over profits. I would love to hear a little bit more about this for the audience to understand. And within that context, Laurie, talk to me about your definition of success these days.
Yeah, so the People Over Profits chapter was really a lot about my career as a finance person, a Wall Street person. And, I always felt that I had a mission to, it wasn't about making money. It was about making a difference. It was about changing an industry that was fraught with a lot of conflicts of interest and self-interest and a lot of fraud and a lot of, winning versus losing. It was like, an industry that was like, you could be an advisor to someone, but it wasn't aligned with the outcomes. And I just thought it was all upside down, and it didn't make sense to me when I entered the industry. And I started at a company called Lehman Brothers, Shearson Lehman Brothers, and I was trained by, they were some of the best in terms of training, but I really had no experience in finance and no formal degree when I started working in the World Trade Center. And but from the very beginning, not knowing anything, I did know like the industry was wrong and I didn't think, oh, you're going to go in and disrupt it. You're going to change the industry, or you're going to, turn things upside down and start an independent model or a fiduciary model. I didn't think anything like that. I just thought it was wrong. I was just thought what I need to do is listen to people, ask questions, and solve problems. And if I can do that and figure out a way that it's not a win-lose, it's that I'm online, that I'm sitting on the same side of the table as the client, that's really different from what everybody else is doing. Now, this started in 1987, so this is a long time ago, but it was just, that was always my kind of mission. And money was just making money or being successful by the world standards, just a byproduct of doing things. What I thought I was doing things aligned with the client in the right way, and I fought a lot of battles along the way because I just really, that gets back to your purpose question. I don't know why. I've always been kind of a little bit of a crusader, somebody who just challenges the status quo and is not comfortable with it if it just feels like it's wrong, So that chapter, I think, was more about, it was about that, but it was also about, 9/11 and, so that's kind of, and I think my purpose now, or how I would define success, is kind of a lot of what I've touched on. It's like I just want to continue to grow, in my understanding of what God really wants me here for. Like if I can, you said enlightenment. I feel like I just want to continue. I know I'm not done here. I could be done tomorrow or in the next 5 minutes or in the next 10 years or 20. I don't know what the timeline is, but my definition of success is like to continue to make a difference in the ways that I can with the gifts I've been given and the things that have been honed over these years. So if I can go out and there can be one person listening to this that gets something out of it, or it changes the course of what they were going to do in a positive way, or they go and get the book and read it and it makes a difference, then that's success to me.
Yes, how beautiful.
That's success.
That's really wonderful to hear, which is really a reminder. That's why I do this too. It seems like we only need to be reminded. It's almost like the whisper. It's something, the intuitive whisper, listening that can change everything. Has been my experience.
I think that whisper, intuitive whisper. One of my friends, who's a very spiritual person, I tell him now that since my mom is gone, he's my call. You have the person in your life who's your phone call. And if something good or something bad happens, I call Ian. And I said, Ian, that's a protected place. You are my call. And he has these great, things that he says in his lexicon of things. And one of the things he said one day is, I said, I just heard this. I heard this intuitive whisper, what you call it, intuitive whisper. And he said, he's from Brooklyn. He's African American. He says in his Brooklyn accent, God speaks in simple.
Yes. And gentle. Yes.
Gentle and simple.
Yes. That's it. I have goosebumps. Yes. It's a confirmation. That's funny. It's how I look to, like, for signs, within other people and experiences, just of that whisper, what is he trying to say? Because we are not always ready to, let's say, there's so much happening within the mind. So it's not always easy, right, to listen to that voice. So I a lot of times I look for the outside, which is not really outside to me. Everything's happening in God. So I'm always looking, let me see in the next sign. So it's wonderful how you felt guided your entire life to, to be here now. It's almost like has prepared you, has made you who you are today, which is really, really, really beautiful. Wow, Laurie, I really appreciate your presence.
Lovely podcast. It's really lovely. I mean, it's I'm going to do, I told you earlier
Yes.
that I'm doing a podcast right after this.
Yeah.
It's all hard finance.
Gosh. I'm
But
very
I
good at
think you
that
can
too.
take the hard
Yeah.
finance, and approach it with love. It makes a difference. People hear
Oh,
it. They
yeah.
hear something different than,
Yes.
what they've heard over and over again, or they may receive it differently, and actually take what you're saying and use it in their careers or whatever. So I'm giving a talk tomorrow to a big group of industry professionals, and the topic, I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And they want me to talk about, a chapter out of the book. And I said, well, I'm going to talk about failure. That's what I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about,
Yeah.
so
A very good place to start, right? Yeah. Learning
yes,
from there. Yes.
learning
Yeah.
from how powerful failures can be,
Mm.
how transformational,
Mm.
failing can be.
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging people to go out and do dumb things, but
Right.
but I was like, yeah, I think I can approach this. I think I can use this topic and talk to a bunch of business people about failing.
Yes,
So,
that sounds interesting to me. Yes, from that perspective of doing business and not being afraid, right, Laurie, to
right.
move forward regardless. Just always, there's something about that. That speaks. I think it's coming from the heart too. I think they say, isn't it the interpretation of the word heart has to do with courage. So having the courage to move forward, regardless. I love
Absolutely.
there are no limitations to that life lesson in your book, because that has to do with your grandfather. And I love what he said, your connection to him, and how he said the only limitations in life are those we impose on ourselves. That is so true.
Yes.
That's a
Yes.
beautiful message to hear too.
He I think that I say, I there's a story, I think, in that chapter, but I have said to people, don't create your own prison.
Yes, yes,
And there's a whole story about that,
yes.
but he taught me that, these limits that we place on ourselves you have to really step outside and look at it and say, who is limiting me? There's the world is not a fair place. There's a lot of things that happen to all of us, but a lot of times the biggest obstacles are created by ourselves. So
Yes.
he did teach me a lot of really valuable things. He had an 8th grade education, but he was a very wise man.
Yes, yeah, I got that the message, of course, and it's it's interesting how it's an energetic resonance too, and when you talked about being in the presence of business people talking business and all that, but there's something about you that is I think it will be transmitted. It's just so peaceful, so loving and kind and peaceful. So that's it's a beautiful transmission to. Which is something that we don't need words for it. It's just there, and people get to feel that. And they a lot of times they won't know where it's coming from, but it's there, and I think that's it. If we can do that to become the message and not just deliver messages, but
well, that's how this podcast feels. It's an energy thing, It's very if you can go into a situation that may not be peaceful, but you can bring peace to it, it changes everything.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yes,
and it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You could be talking about a business situation or a negotiation, or you could be talking about a personal relationship or a friendship or anything. You bring peace and love to it, it's really hard for it to go off the rails.
Yes.
It's hard to do that sometimes, but it's hard if you approach things that way and say, I'm gonna approach this person or this situation with love. God, let me, as upset as I've been, and please give me the tools. And I pray that a lot, give me the tools to approach this with love.
Yes.
And it's the outcome, not the outcome that my ego wants, right?
Yeah.
We have to, you said this earlier, it's really, we fight our egos a lot in this human form. So it's not what my ego wants. What is the right thing to do? And that also does not mean, God does not want us to be doormats. That's not, it's not what, he does want us to approach things with love, though, and that doesn't mean everything works out, but it does put us on a much better path when it's there's a funny thing that just occurred to me when we were talking about this, but I might have said this in the book, but maybe not, but a long time ago when I was facing a tough business situation, there was a guy who was branch manager, and he wasn't the most enlightened person you'd ever meet, but he had a great saying about this very unfair situation that was going on. It was really kind of discriminatory in a branch system in New York, and I was upset about it. But I was successful, by their standards, and was what they called a big producer on Wall Street. That was what they called you. And the manager came in of this office, and he knew I was upset about the situation, and he said, "Lori, you don't need to take a bazooka out on an ant." And I just thought, wow, it's such a Wall Street kind of saying. But in my vernacular, I guess I would say, you don't really need to take a bazooka out most of the time. You can approach things, with peace and love. And, most of the time things will turn around, and it may not turn around when you want them to, but they will turn around for the better. So I try to do that. I don't always succeed, but I do try.
Yes, yeah. And it's my case too. Although the feeling of anger doesn't arise anymore. That energy is not charged anymore. But of course, when I see unfairness, I think my thing is really injustice. Oh, like people hurting animals or children. Our women being hurt too unfairly, being treated unfairly. So that's...
I think you want to just step in. Yes. And when you see that, you want to just step in and change it, and it's, I feel the same way. It's just like, it's an injustice. And I think that's kind of correlates to a lot of things, and at least in my walk, where I'm just like, this isn't right. I don't think it's right. It's not just, and it should change. And if you don't step in, who's going to do it?
Yes.
So I think that's been kind of this, I don't know, deep down passion for my whole life. I know that's existed. So, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, what you say makes a lot of sense to me too. I love everything about you anyway. It's just so wonderful.
This is lovely.
Yeah, thank you for being you. Thank you for giving yourself, to the experience of life, to the extent that you have, going through so much pain at that level, but knowing the difference too. Because I can hear the joy too in your voice, in your soul. I can hear that. So that says a lot. That it shows really. It's very clear to me where you know what you are, not just who, but what. So that's wonderful.
Thank you. I feel that both ways. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. So I want to mention your website. It will be here on the podcast profile. It will be clickable, so it's easy to get to. ivwadvisors.com. And there you offer services of, because this is not something that I'm familiar with, but it's an investment advisor. Yeah, you have advisors there for investment. And I love the philosophy. Also, let me see, you say we develop an in-depth understanding of your situation, your aspirations, needs, and plans for your life, not just your money. So that caught my attention. I have it here under philosophy.
Yeah, a great team of people at LVW Advisors, and it's a multi-generational business, meaning I don't have kids in it, but they're younger people. I always felt it was really important to have a business that outlasted me and also reflected what the clients look like, So we deal with entire families. We deal with institutions or not-for-profits that we particularly care about the causes, access to education, healthcare, the arts. So people can go out there and take a look at our business. I think it aligns a lot with some of the things we've talked about. And I think it's it's important to, have a higher purpose for whatever you do. It's a hard, kind of a hard science, finance, but money exists. It isn't in and of itself, just for the sake of having money. It has a greater purpose. And so if you can tap into that and understand it, understand what the purpose is for people, I think it really makes you different. So hopefully we do that, and we try to be good stewards in the world we live in. So
yes. So from my perspective here, that's it. Yeah, you are being that reflection of the soul, of the spirit, of God doing its work. So thank you so much again for saying yes to all of it. Thank you so much, Lori, for being you, for your presence.
Thank you for doing the podcast. It's wonderful.
Thank you. So we'll be in touch again. But for now, take good care of yourself. We'll be in touch.
You too.
Bye for now.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Lori Van Dusen and her work, please visit lvwadvisors.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.